Welcome back to my channel for the 7th in a series of videos about intuition by design. And today we're going to talk about the heart. So let's go ahead and get started. Follow your heart. What does your heart say? These are really common phrases that I'm sure you've heard and you've probably even said. What does your heart say? A lot of times when we're trying to make decisions or we're considering how we feel about a person or a situation, we'll do all the stuff that we do with our analytical mind, right? And then we'll go, yeah, but what does your heart say? And we do this because we understand that the heart has its own intelligence. And even in the ways that different fields of science are operating now, we're recognizing that there are actually 3 brains. So there's our thinking mind, our analytical mind, our logical mind. We know that one, right? Then there's the heart intelligence, and then there's the gut brain. So science is really exploring a lot of things that ancient people, I think, already knew, but they're mapping it and proving it and so on. So today we're going to talk a little bit about some of that science that has been going on and also how human design understands what we think of as the heart, because it's very specific to the system. It's not like anything I've really seen anywhere else. So science has many different branches, right? And one that I love about the heart is from the Institute of HeartMath. And they have been studying all kinds of different things about the heart. And I want to read you just a little bit from their book, Heart Intelligence. It says, many perspectives and teachings over the centuries from diverse cultures around the world have spoken of the heart as an access point to the wisdom of our soul or higher source. Although we cannot say that the non-local intuition, so that's a kind of quantum physics term, non-local, meaning things that are in different places at the same time. So we cannot say that the non-local intuition research described above in this book proves that we have a soul or there is a universal source of intelligence. I'm just going to assume that you agree with that if you're here on my channel. It does indicate that the heart is indeed connected to a source of intelligence and not bound by the limits of time and space. It may just be that science is just on the verge of confirming that the majority of historical icons of the world's spiritual traditions have been right all along. Right? So this is not a new idea, but science is kind of starting to catch up with it, right? And I do think that the heart is a great source of intuition. And let me just make a note here. In this series, the way I'm using the term intuition is about our interface with our non-physical guidance, whether you consider that your inner guidance, okay, that might come from your inner being, or whether you consider it being tapped into superconsciousness, into that creative intelligence of the universe, or if you're working with angels or guides or, totem animals or whatever you might be working with that are in non-physical. But the point is that there are intelligences, and there are many different intuitive intelligences that enable us to tap into information, awarenesses, possibilities, insights that are not logical, reasonable, rational. You can't prove them. They're not strategic, right? So they're not that kind of information. And the heart has, I think, historically, as they said in the Institute of HeartMath, has been a place that we turn to for some kind of guidance. What does your heart say? And it provides a counterpoint to our logical mind and to our kind of more scientific, Western scientific way of thinking. HeartMath has also shown that a lot of times this information is shown in the heart first, and then the heart sends information to the brain. Very interesting. So the heart is actually more receptive and is faster and receives its intuitive impulses faster than the brain does. So it's worth considering, and it's worth considering how often we might discard the guidance of our heart because it doesn't make sense to us. The other thing that can happen is that through trauma, through betrayal, through grief, we can put a lot of guarding around our heart. We can kind of lock it away. And then it can be hard to access the intuition that is naturally there if we're, kind of all bound up this way. So I'm going to talk a little bit later in this video about some things that you can do to help open that up if you choose to. But it's just worth noting that there is this, scientific basis to say, yes, the heart is deeply intuitive and it has its own intelligence and it's feeding some of its perspective to the brain. And so there's a very dynamic relationship between that heart and brain. Now, in the story of human design, the heart chakra split into two towards the end of the 18th century. And that's how we got the G center and the will center. And those are the two parts of the heart. I know that some people call the will center the heart center. I think that's very confusing, and I'm not going to do that. If you have seen that, I would encourage you to call it the will center, because the G center, in my view, is more what we tend to think of as the heart center. It's the center for love and lovability, identity, our self-concept, and direction in life. Those are the things that we tend to think of, I think, more of with the heart. Whereas the will center is the center for value and worthiness and willpower. And courage lives there, and self-worth lives there, and valuing oneself lives there. And I think that those can be aspects for sure of the heart. But I think just generally speaking, when we think of the heart, we think of the qualities that are more in the G center. Now, the G center is actually a very complex center, and I have a whole series of videos that I encourage you to go and check out here so that you can learn more about it if you want to. They're a little bit technical, so if you're brand new to human design, it's not the place that I would start. But if you're more familiar, I think you might get a lot out of kind of a deep dive into the G center. But just in terms of human design, both the knowing circuit runs straight through the G center, and also the centering circuit runs right through the G center. So does the logic circuit as well, and so does the centering circuit. So there's a lot going on in the G center. Let me just put it that way. There's a lot going on in the G center. But we do have two highly intuitive circuits running through the G center. And so that knowing circuit is where we just know things and we just know what we know. And for the G center, it has to do with purpose, right? A lot of times when people come to me for readings, they want to understand their purpose more. And so the one, which is on the G center, is that center for purpose and for self-expression. Whereas the two, which we'll talk about more in just a second, is about acceptance and receptivity. And so that's what's running through the knowing circuit, is when we're able to be receptive and to allow in, we can have a better sense of what our true purpose is and know more how we want to be able to express ourselves. And all of that is very non-linear, non-logical energy. It's very intuitive. So it makes sense that we access that more with heart intelligence and heart intuition than we do with our thinking brain. Right? The sensing circuit, when it runs through the G center, comes up through the love of the body, or embodiment, right? Which is our ability to fully incarnate and to honor and appreciate and live through the body, but not have dysfunction of the body control us, but actually to tap into the true body wisdom. And I would say the body tap into the body wisdom, the body's intuitive impulses, the body's intelligence, because there is an intelligence there that, again, is not in that kind of left brain logical way. And then there's a storytelling gate, which connects to another storytelling gate on the throat. And so I think that this is a really poignant thing to think about, which is that humanity has communicated with one another and told ourselves who we are individually, tribally, collectively through stories forever. I mean, people have, been around the fire telling stories forever. And so Stories touch us in the heart. They inspire us in the heart. They are poignant in the heart, right? Like you hear a really good story and you're like, oh, right? You can really feel that in your heart. So I think that's a piece of it as well. Then the will center, as I said a moment ago, is the center for value and worthiness and willpower. And I always like to say courage. And I think this is where it makes sense to me as being part of the heart, because courage often requires willpower, right? You've got to kind of tap in to a deeper power inside of yourself to be able to move through fear, which is what courage is. Courage isn't the absence of fear. Courage is the ability to take action even though you are afraid. And so, because in French, the word for heart is la cour, which has the same root as courage. And so the heart is what gives us courage. And I think that lives in the will center. Certainly our worthiness too, our self-worth is in the will center. Our own sense of value is in the will center. So all of those things I think are connected to the power that we can have with the heart, because the will center is a motor. And that means in human design, it means it's an energy center. Well, they're all energy centers. It means it's like producing energy. Okay. And so it's a place where we can tap for energy for a period of time with the will center, because the will, the mantra with the will is that it works to rest. It has power for a period of time and then it needs to rest, but it's where the power is. Now, and ironically, the G center in human design is not a motor, which is interesting to me, because in the research that HeartMath has done, one of the things they've discovered is that the magnetic field of the heart is 5,000 times stronger than the magnetic field of the brain. 5,000 times. That's a lot. It's not just a little bit. It's not 5 times, it's not even 50 or even 500, 5,000 times stronger. So our magnetic field is coming from this heart. And I think, yes, the will center is a part of that, but there's also in the G center, the 2 is the magnetic monopole. And so according to human design, the magnetic monopole sits in that 2, but it only attracts. So it's not actually creating that torus field that you can see here from this HeartMath illustration, right? It's not necessarily creating that because this field is going out and coming in and going out and coming in. Whereas I don't actually know how a magnetic monopole would work. It's a magnet with one pole. I don't know if science has discovered this yet or not. Again, this is the story of human design. I do think we know that the heart is very attractive. It's a very attractive force, and this magnetic field is an attractive force. And so I would say that there is something, even if it's not a motor, according to human design, there is something in that G center, because there's definitely a lot of power in the heart. There are 2 ways that the heart can show up in the inner authority in human design. Now let's remember that inner authority is the way that you're designed to make the best decisions for you. And in human design, all of them are not mental. We always say don't make decisions with your mind. So they're all intuitive in different ways. So in this case, one has to do with when you have a defined will center and it's connected directly to the throat through that 2145. That ego manifestors have that. People who are manifestors have this connected. It's called ego because the will center is also called the ego center. And also some manifesting generators have this, where they also have the sacral defined, but they still have this channel. And so that's one place, right, where the will center is connected to the throat, where you're tuning into what are the creative or intuitive impulses that are coming from that will center that are helping to guide you in life. That's the authority for those manifestors. And it's definitely a contributing factor for manifesting generators. So that's one place where it shows up in inner authority. The other is with self-projected authority, which some projectors have. And that is when one of the 3 channels between the G center, and the throat are defined. And so this is where their guidance is coming from, is from that connection between the throat and the heart. And in this case, it's the G center. And it's coming from this sense of identity and this sense of direction in life. You could also, from a spiritual point of view, since it's the center for love, you could also think of it as the way that love is guiding you as well. And that is an intuitive form. However, for self-projected authority, it's really just not that many people. Okay, there's about 20% of the population are projectors. And then a subset of that are going to be self-projected. So I like to say, actually, I think we all have access to this. I think we all have access to the intelligence of the heart, and it can help us make our decisions. So even if you don't have self-projected authority, or if you don't have, you're not an ego manifestor, or you don't have ego authority, then I still think that you can tap into this power of the heart. I mean, after all, HeartMath is doing all of these studies, and they're not looking at people's human design, I don't think anyway, right? They're just studying them based on other criteria. And all of these people are able to tap into the intelligence of their heart. So what I would say to you is it could be fun to go and look at the different gates and the channels and so on that are on the G Center. And like I said, you can go and look at that playlist that I have on my channel because I go into that in a lot of depth. And you can see if you resonate with any of them, whether they're defined in your chart or not. So for example, like me, the 46, which is in the sensing circuit, is the love of the body and embodiment. I don't have that defined in my chart. In fact, I only have one gate in the sensing circuit defined in my chart, but I consider myself an embodiment expert. I'm somebody who's been working with embodiment for 30 plus years. And I've helped many other people get more in their bodies and live from their bodies. So for me, that is a huge source of intuitive guidance, is what we get when we're fully in the body. So even if it's not defined in your chart, you may go and look at what those gates are, and you may go, oh yeah, I really relate to like spirit, for example, love of spirit. That's the gate 25. You may have that even if it's not defined in your chart. So, you might have compassion, which is the gate 15. So don't think that just because it's not colored in your chart that you don't have it, because you do. Plus, you can also cultivate it. I think the gates of the G Center are more fruitful for you rather than the gates on the Will Center personally. Of course, you can always go and explore them as well and see. I think that they're a little more challenging in terms of looking at them as heart energy. The one that would really stand out to me would be the 26, which in quantum human design is integrity. And so having a sense of integrity, I think, is a quality of the heart. And if anything, the gate 51 is the most intuitive of the gates on the Will Center. It's the gate of shock or initiation. And it's really requires a lot of intuitive ability to know when to use the energy of that 51 and when not to. So you're welcome to do that, but I think that you might just find a home for yourself somewhere in the gates of the G Center. And I encourage you to really own that for yourself. Then the other piece I want to really encourage you to do is to work with some energy practices that help you develop heart coherence. That's what they call it at the Institute of HeartMath. But it's also something that's known in the yoga traditions, right, which have been around for thousands and thousands of years. And so people have been doing practices for helping to clear stuck energy, stagnant emotions, old grief, old trauma out of the heart, and to be able to open and then also build that magnetic field. So in the Kundalini yoga practices that I do, we do this all the time, is working to help energize, kind of supercharge the energy of the heart, because we know that this is the source of our big magnetic field, right? Which extends out several feet beyond our physical form. And depending on how much you practice, it can really be quite large. And for those of you who sometimes find yourself to be overly sensitive, meaning that you can be impacted by other people's energy in ways that are uncomfortable for you or not beneficial for you, you can, if you build your heart energy and you build the magnetic field of your heart, you will be much less susceptible to other people's energy. Now, I did a Kundalini yoga practice not too long ago, and I'm going to link to it here. And I would really encourage you to go and check it out. It was part of a teaching that I did about Jupiter in the human design chart. But the Kriya, as we call it, is a combination of breathing and movements. We're all specifically designed to open the heart. Okay, open and super energize the heart. Actually, most of the Kundalini yoga practices that I put on my channel focus on the heart and the belly. And so I would encourage you to do that, because I think that there's just so many benefits that come from that. For one thing, moving out to stuck energy is a really good thing, but being able to get in touch with your heart so that its intuitive force, its intelligence can come through clearly to you rather than being distorted or squelched by the armoring that you may have put around your heart. The one other place I would encourage you to look has to do with the will center, which has to do with your self-worth. Because unfortunately, self-worth is pretty low among most people, especially women, people of color, LGBTQ, AI plus people, because those of us who have been more marginalized or pushed out of the mainstream take in a lot of cultural conditioning about what's valuable. And so it's up to us individually, but also together, to build our own sense of worthiness, to recognize the true worth that we have. And that you can see this, like if you, right? This is what happens when we don't have worthiness, right? Is we tend to, and what are we doing here? Our heart is collapsing, right? Our heart's collapsing, right? Kind of move through life this way now. Obviously, if you read a lot or you're at a computer, but still, I think the source of it really has a lot to do with us protecting the heart, collapsing the heart, closing the heart in, not quite feeling like, do I really belong here? Am I accepted here? Am I okay? Do I have worth? Do I have value? Right? So doing some things that help you to build your value, and I'll tell you, doing those Kundalini yoga practices can help you do that just energetically. It's not about going in and processing your childhood or something like that. It's really energy practices that can help you with that. So I would encourage you to do it in that way as well. But in addition to that, just really look at your worthiness, because, if you don't have the money you want in your life, if you don't have the kind of job or business that you want, if you're having trouble, attracting things into your life that you really want instead of things that you don't want, chances are there's a kind of leakage that's happening for you around a lack of worthiness. Maybe at some point I'll do a video or a series of videos about building self-worth. You can let me know in the comments if you would like me to do that. All right, that is our 7th. I think I have one more video on intuition in design, and obviously this was bigger than just design, because design isn't the whole world. There's all kinds of other wonderful things for us to tap into. And if you haven't already, I invite you to get my free Getting Started with Human Design ebook series. And you can also get your human design chart. You'll get both of them when you register at yourfreehumandesignchart.com, yourfreehumandesignchart.com. Just go ahead and register there. You'll get your human design chart, and you'll also get my free ebooks. And then you'll also get announcements from me when I put out videos and the different kinds of courses I offer and things like that. Okay. Many blessings. Much love.